right, we'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion, possible action on claims.
In the amount of $1,869,299.85. A good portion of this is due to the remaining bond payments and the capital outlay for the fire station.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion, possible action on approving the operator license application submitted by Ariane Young. Pending safe serve certificate. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, I believe so. And that is contingent upon a background check and any outstanding debt owed to the city.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion, possible action on the 2020 budget review.
Move to.
So we were hoping for, we get this guy out of here.
Wow.
Psych. All right, so we included in the packet the total budget with some of the summary information. We have had a few updates since then. And between Alice and I, we can kind of touch on some of those sort of things. But I think one of the ones that we wanted to kind of touch on is that the way we had been doing in the past, when you would kind of look at probably like your levy calculation sheet, that summary form, is that when we use the assessed valuation, we weren't taking into account our tax increment districts. While in the past we really haven't had any, so it didn't really matter much. But now that we do have these tax increment districts, it does affect that evaluation. So we want to make sure that what we're presenting to the council, then ultimately the public, is also what people then will see reflected on their tax bills as well. So if we don't take that tax increment district information into it, you're going to see people saying, well, you said our taxes were going to go up, city portion, 3%. Well, they actually went up 3.6 because we didn't take into account the TIF and things like that. So we did make some changes for that. So that did adjust a few things on here. But basically, kind of where we're at is that what we have currently in the proposed budget is a 4% levy increase, which would then result in basically a 1.29% mill rate increase. The levy increase is kind of mitigated somewhat by the fact that we had about 3.8% in net new construction over the past year, so that obviously helps with that and with the assessed valuation growing as well. So in comparison, we looked, like I said, we are proposing a 4% tax levy increase this year. Last year it was 3.27% tax levy increase. This year we had the 1.29% mill rate increase, but last year, because of the valuation change, wasn't quite, or the new growth wasn't quite as high. It was actually a 1.53% mill rate increase last year. So even though our levy is higher than what was done last year, actually our mill rate increase is less because of the strong growth that we're seeing. Our operating expenditures are up 3.25%, but with that, we also have non-tax revenue coming in. A chunk of that is that with our new city engineer, we are assuming that a good chunk of that salary will be billed out to third parties. So while the expenditures there, we also have additional revenue that's coming in as well that helps kind of offset some of the things like that. So with that, even though we have an operating expenditure increase of 3.25%, our tax levy for operations is only going up 1.64%. So it's not just a kind of an apples to apples. Our biggest increase obviously is our property tax levy for debt. That's up 10.5%. And with that, it's that we did have bonding for the new fire station. We had bonding for our CIP projects, things like that. So those are going on for payment the first time this year. So that's why we're seeing that kind of big increase. So between the two, the 1.64% increase in the levy for operations, the 10.5% increase for debt, we're seeing an overall tax levy increase of 4% is what this budget proposes. In my summary, in my memo, I talk about, kind of some of the increases that you're seeing in the expenditures. We have some personnel changes. One of them is our new GIS position, which is going to be split among a number of departments, but it does still have about a $30,000 impact on the tax levy. The police department has a community service officer request, which the chief summarizes in his budget information. We have a new police department dive team. We've got some other kind of changes in some personnel sort of things. The fire department budget is definitely up. There's some obviously reasons with that with their new fire station. They're going from a facility of the size they have now to one that's almost 3 times as big. So obviously we are going to have some operational cost increase with that. We're seeing some increases in salt from the state, things like that. As far as some of our more fixed things, we're looking at a 2% cost of living adjustment for employees. We have a 5% healthcare increase, which honestly, all things considered, isn't bad. We're also estimating a 5% increase in all of our other insurance coverages, our general liability, workers' comp, things like that. That's just a number that we're using right now. We're actually hoping that it'll come in less than that. We went out for competitive bids on pretty much all of our other insurance. And so we should be getting those back within the next week or so. So we'll know where that number is, and hopefully that'll come down. The 5% estimate hopefully will come down from there. And then with that, on the revenue side, obviously the biggest change this year is that we're not levying for the EMS operations, which is $236,000, which obviously helps a lot in the overall budget. And then with that also, in the past, we've always transferred money over from EMS to help cover city administrative costs related to basically running the EMS. We're going to do that again in 2020 because we will still have closeout through at least through half the year, if not more, administratively, to kind of close the EMS out with the billing and final accounting and things like that. So we still will do that for next year. To note what's not included in the budget that's presented is that the police department did request another officer for next year. That would be about another $95,000 expense that could be added. It's not in there now, but we wanted to make the council aware that that request was there. So really, there's a lot of information here. I think we're probably starting this later than you have in the past. And I think just a lot of that is timing wise from when I started and then getting things to department heads and kind of rolling them through. So we'll probably have a more compact window now moving forward to kind of get this through the finance committee with a recommendation to the council. Our plan right now is to have the budget and levy hearing and adoption at that second meeting in November. So we have about a month to kind of get through all this. So my guess would be is that we'll possibly want to have special meetings kind of from the finance committee coming up over the next week or two to be able to hammer out anything else that you want to do before we have a final recommendation. So I guess with that, that's kind of the real quick summary of everything. And we have all the department heads here to answer any specific questions. I can try to answer any specific questions. But I guess, from what we're looking for is input on the budget. How do you feel with where it's at? What questions do you have? Do you have changes where you wanted to see it to be? Things like that.
A couple of questions for you and then one for Chief St. Martin. The last few years, if I recall, we haven't had any rate increase in the health insurance. 5% seems to be a jump. Is that correct?
No, we have had rate increases over the last year. I think last year it was like 3 something maybe. I'm trying to remember. We've gone through these meetings recently with our provider, but we have had increases in the past, and 5% actually all from based on kind of our usage and then what we've seen at other locations. It's probably about right. People are seeing anywhere between like 3.5% to 5.5% increases in their health insurance.
Okay.
Right now.
That's fine. I mean, I'm just preliminary questions.
Yep.
And then the EMS dive team was strictly, and I think in Scott, your narrative, you put it under.
It's not on Scott, it's a part of Jeff's.
Yeah, but in his narrative, is there some talk of EMS costs in the fire department?
That's emergency management.
So what that was an emergency management. So I can let Scott kind of touch on that.
Honorable Mayor, Finance Committee members, I think what you're talking about is we have to contract with Regions Hospital or Regions to do our EMS training now?
Well, that was another question. for you,
Okay, so,
But the dive team specifically is not into your
No.
department.
No,
But wasn't it in your narrative, some part of dive team?
I don't
don't
believe so.
think so.
He had the emergency management
Maybe I got
part
that.
that was different. Jeff had the dive team, which was talked about that it would move to his budget in 2020.
And then EMS was contractually, and I remember they, specifically Lakeview had said that they would continue paying that at a public safety meeting.
they said they would continue training us or with us,
Continuing the education, I think we had that in even a,
but they can't do it. Lakeview cannot do it because they're not licensed in Wisconsin to teach our continuing education for our EMR training. So they will train with us, but we have to contract with Regions to do to continue. Basically, we're continuing exactly what we had, the exact same thing under St. Croix EMS, only it's going to cost us about $4,100 a year plus our training cost. So that's why we need that to continue our education.
okay.
That's just for the completion of the certification, isn't it?
No, that's for continuing education, for our EMR certifications, to keep our licensure up for our people who have,
For the fire department?
for EMRs, yeah.
Okay. What was your first question?
Insurance rate?
Yep.
Oh, is any of that based upon experience? Are we-
It's all 100% based on experience. So I just pulled up I have a nice collection here. Actually,
Thanks, Scott.
last year, our health insurance went up 6.5%. But with the type of plan that we have, basically, we do get kind of money back every year. We have an estimate amount of usage that we'll have. We pay our premiums, but if we come in less than what our premiums actually are, we get a refund. So we have a fund where we use the money that we get out of those refunds to help pay the cities. We use it to completely pay the city's portion of any increases. So so last year, the 6.5%, we used money from that fund to pay our share. The employees then paid their share of the 6.5% increase.
So basically,
Same this
it
year.
was told to us it was a zero increase.
So.
We didn't pay anything on the levy for it.
Yeah,
and
because we
we-
refunded it back.
And when
Yes.
we went through, for all of the healthcare for every single employee, we matched it to what they're actually currently taking. And then the balance was about $16,000 increase. And we have that in here to transfer in from that fund
Yep.
of that money. So that
So
it
we're
will
not
not
seeing a-
affect levy.
Tax levy increase, right. So for 5% for next year, we're not going to have to raise any taxes to pay for that. We use this fund where we get our refunds into. The employees will have to pay the 5% of their share, though, increase.
Okay.
How often do we go out for a new contract? Is that a yearly?
So we go out and get quotes, kind of on an annual basis, for different coverages. So for health insurance this year, we did not because of my starting time. It was way too late in the process to be able to fully do it, although we did have the broker that we work with at least go out and check with other areas about what the increases were to see. But from what we're paying, it's actually a very competitive rate already, even with the 5% increase, even with the 6.5%. So we didn't go this year. We are planning on doing it for next year.
Gotcha.
But because we have more time with the other overall insurance, we did go out for competitive quotes on that. So we'll be getting those back soon. And that's a pretty good size number as well for us, so.
Got it. Thanks.
Pretty good increase in the state transportation aid by 100,000.
The new Carmichael. And
What?
Carmichael Road,
A lot of roads through Mike Johnson's work as they're coming online on the systems where increasing the transportation because of that.
Okay. And obviously, we don't get our fair share of state revenue.
yeah, those are
a
actual
lot.
numbers of what we got from the state for all of those.
You should work on that, Aaron. You and Allison get on the phone and get some more money.
We will try.
What's our current cap? Levy limit?
So and it's actually a little bit of how we kind of structure whatever, but technically, because we can exclude debt from that levy limit, we could actually be levying up to a little over $7 million. Now, when we submit our levy, as you can see, last year, technically, we had that 6.4 million for levy for operations. Well, really, we kind of can take a look at our overall levy and determine, which is the right debt to include, all those sort of things. We don't under levy, because that just penalizes us, to be honest, with the levy limit. So we are well within our levy limits is the answer.
I understand that, but.
So 7 million.
So as far as mill rate, I think last year it dropped from 5.7 to 5.6, 5.56.
So last year's mill rate went up 1.53%. So it went from 5.27 to 5.35.
Right, but our cap, what was the
Oh.
deal with the cap on that? Because there was a transfer of funds for something, I think it had to do with state aid,
Yeah.
and it reduced our overall mill rate cap, and I think the previous year it was right around 5.7, but it dropped it to, I think, like 5.56.
It was really tight.
Pardon me?
It was really tight for.
Yeah, do we know what that is currently?
I've talked with Sean Eller from Ellers, and he did not mention anything about that.
Okay,
We just have our overall limit
Just the worksheet we have to do.
with that $7 million.
right, but
Yeah.
I'd like to know what that translates into as far as the mill rate.
Well, I think with what we're proposing is definitely under that still.
I would hope so, I mean, it's.
Definitely under that,
Yeah.
fairly significantly, to be honest, but I will
I'm
find
just
out.
wondering if that rate is
Yeah.
constant from what it was last year, if it went up, if it went down.
I'll make sure and check on that.
Yeah, we'll find that out.
What was that?
I'm trying to
Was
remember
something-
exactly what it was. It was how they classified something, and because there was an offset, that reduced our overall mill rate from what it had been down to 5. I think-
Actual cap on the mill rate
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah,
not on the actual levy.
both, but I want to know what that translates into in the mill rate.
The one thing I'd like, just so that when we're talking this budget stuff, that we talk in black and white, because we start talking about all this stuff, the people out in the public get really confused at what's happening, so we gotta be very transparent on how we're doing these numbers. What is it gonna cost? Is it gonna be $5.35, or is it gonna be, don't get into all this milk kind of crap? Stuff that people don't really
Right.
understand.
Yeah, well, then definitely one of the things we'll do once we get to the budget that we kind of have a comfort level with, and even with our next meeting, is if we have a proposed number still, is that we can have a kind of a run done
Yeah.
that'll show, if you own X value of property, whether it's residential or commercial, here's what this would result in a tax increase for you,
Yeah.
what the actual dollar would be. We'll definitely do that.
Right, thanks.
Going back to city engineer, what are you basing the chargebacks on? Are you forecasting for a certain amount of that salary being gotten from chargebacks, and what is that?
We're figuring 50% of his time, so we had.
50, 50?
At least, it's probably be more than that. It might be
Gotcha.
in most other areas where, Stillwater and everything. And working with Mike Johnson and Mike Moraz to come up with the rate that will be charged for his work for private development and to our own street projects, but it'll be coming in probably right around $100 an hour, which is still $50 to $80 an hour cheaper than what we are currently paying with.
Right.
So it'll be a savings for the developers, it'll be a savings on our street projects. But figuring that amount of time times his hour, time the 1,040 hours, and that's split between community development and the public works. That's what
Gotcha.
it's based on.
And is that what you use to figure out the 3.25% increase on the property tax levy, except for, and then the 1.64, 1.64 of the operating budget?
It factors in. So basically, our operating expenditures are up 3.25.
Yep.
But then our non-tax revenues are up over 8%, and that includes that chargeback number. So that's why, even though our expenditures are up 3.25, our levy for the operations is only up that 1.64. Because
Gotcha.
we do have offsetting non-tax revenue to help with that.
Gotcha. So the
Including-
chargebacks are baked into that?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
Including the transportation aid is also part of that went up.
Right.
All those
Yep.
individual line items that went up.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask Mike Moraz a question? I mean, I know it's early, I'm not trying to jump on him, but is there any way, you're short people, you're short help. Do we need to look at something there? And all of you can say that, it's a loaded question, but I know that the parks, you know, you're running behind and cutting the parks, grass, there's things that just are not getting done. Do we need to have more higher starting wage, something?
We're going to try and work within the confines of the part-time budget that we have set in this budget. We're also looking at some capital costs, maybe getting some wing mowers where we can cover more ground. Instead of taking several hours to mow Grandview Park, we can buy a wing mower and do it in 2 hours, and then they can move to the next park. So we're looking at ways to, you know, purchase mowers and equipment that would help be more efficient before we go to the next step and start adding more people.
Are you finding qualified help at a starting wage that is as low as it is?
It's difficult, but it's difficult everywhere, right? I know, you know, we're going to try and promote and try to recruit some more retirees, you know, into the future, look at adjusting some of the part-time wages to help maybe bring in some more experienced people that can stay. Because the situation that we're running into right now is we have a lot of high school, college help, right? That's kind of the wage that we have set. We struggle in the spring startup time because all the kids are still in school. We're okay during the summer months, we have enough help, but then come mid-August, you know, all the kids go back to school, and then we're left with only 3 to 4, you know, part-time helpers that take care of all the parks for the months of, you know, late August, September, and October, and we know the grass keeps growing. So there is some, we need to get back and try and find those unicorns, as Mike Johnson says, that can help us out for the entire 6-month duration.
Okay, well, good. So you are
Yep.
looking at
Oh,
presenting
absolutely.
something else
Yep.
with us?
Yep.
To us?
Yep.
So Randy, you would mention that one thing about let's make sure we're consistent for the public and so they
Yeah.
kind of understand it. So that's going back to why we did a little bit of an adjustment to make sure we're taking into account these tax increment districts that are coming online. Because basically that mill rate increase, I mean, that's pretty much kind of correlates well with the tax bill. So whatever that percentage increase is generally what you see in the increase in the tax bill. Because last year it was 1.53%, and then we pulled some sample tax bills just to make sure we're comparing things right. And then, you know, we have one that, you know, across the board, the new, you know, it talks City of Hudson. They have their estimated value, their net tax, their new tax, 2017 and 2018, it's 1.5%. And it was consistent that way with all the ones that we pulled at different values across the board. So generally, that's going to be a pretty close comparable, but we'll still do those reports where people get an actual dollar sense
Yeah.
of what it means as well.
Because you can give us all sorts of stuff. The one thing that matters is that thing in the mail they get just before Christmas.
Right.
Well, and that's why when we're looking at, we talk with Sean and stuff, because with the TIF coming on, it does have an impact.
It will. yeah.
Right. And we don't want to tell somebody.
That's why we restated last year's to show if he had accounted for that last year, what it would be.
Yeah.
And what is this year, because otherwise, if you go straight off what they're giving us, it would be higher than that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to state it that way and have it, them get to their bill and do that quick math and see that it's not the same.
Exactly.
We want to surprise anybody.
Correct.
Everybody be very comfortable. with
I'd
what
rather
they're
have it
getting.
wind up being a little lower because of than what we estimated, and then be higher.
Good. Sounds like you're on it. You don't want those calls either, do you?
I wouldn't want that surprise, so I wouldn't want to try and have anybody else have it.
Bill, he can have it.
Wow.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Do we have some direction? I mean, this is kind of where we are now, but I mean, as a finance committee, do you have something in mind? You know, a different number? Do you want us to see? You know, we've done kind of just because of the condensed time frame. I have definitely taken the department heads' submissions already and gone through them, and I think I've got like 30 changes I think I made or something, working with the department heads on what's this, what's that, can we cut this, cut there. I mean, from what was submitted, we cut out about 165,000 already. And then we also did come up with about, based on some other, about 130 in other revenue sort of thing as we went back and forth. So we've done a bunch of changing right now, but it doesn't mean we can ever, you know, we're done. I mean, we want to make sure that you as council members have to feel comfortable in what you're ultimately going to be adopting. So if you have direction as far as where you'd like to see this, if you think it's too high, somewhere else, what do you want? We'll come back and do what we can. Obviously, we can get you to whatever number you want. We'll just tell you what that means and what the impacts would be. And then you can decide if you want that or not.
Well, I'd like to delve into this a little, now that I have a harder copy to get. I normally always have some kind of input, right or wrong. But
So then do we want to look at doing maybe another finance committee meeting next week to give everybody some time to go through it and then have another meeting to,
The only consideration on my end is I'm out of town next week.
okay.
I don't know if we wanted to talk about the additional police officer yet. That is not included in
It's not
this.
in that number right now, no.
Gotcha.
can you clarify, is the CSO
Right.
/ and/or a police officer? Or what are you want one, you want both?
They're two different things.
They're two different ones.
The
So you want-
CSOs is a part-time position that's non-sworn, and the CRO would be a full-time sworn position. Two different things.
Do the two have to happen in order for you to do the CSO?
No, they don't have to happen together.
Got it.
The
They're
CSO
two
is
separate
is in
entities.
this budget right now.
It's in this
The
budget,
CSO is, not the
Part-time.
full-time new officer.
which is the 35,000-ish, right?
Yeah, in the part-time line, yep.
Got it. I mean, I would like to see it in the budget, just so we know what that budget impact looks like. I don't know if you would share that, Andy, or?
I don't know that we need to put it in the budget to see what it looks like. I think that
Yeah.
you just,
It's about another
Aaron can
1%.
give you an idea.
Yeah.
Probably about another 1% to the levy, which would, yeah, probably about that.
Strength of serve, where are we at for where we should be? 23, 24? Officers to service. Strength.
Officers to service, but,
How many are we supposed to have for our city population?
well, based on the estimate of about 14,000 people, we're right where we need to be
We are.
for full-time, yeah.
So would you see a benefit in one more officer out on the street instead of a community officer, which in essence would be you, lieutenants, doing those public relations jobs?
No, I think the part-time CSO position has a more significant impact than the one full-time position does.
Really? Then a beat cop, get out there.
At this point, where we're at, yeah.
Okay.
If that officer was added, it'd be another percent, so it'd be 5% levy increase. What that does to the mill rate, we'd have to rerun, but I can tell you off the top of it, it'd be a 5% levy increase.
Gotcha. But if we added that to the budget, how long are you truly talking about that person coming aboard within 2020? Is it a 6-month process, a 3?
We have a current list right now,
Okay,
January.
okay.
I wouldn't make a commitment. I just
Yeah, no,
want to dig into
right,
this
right.
first.
Sure. Same here.
So what would you like to do?
And you're gone all next week?
I am gone all next week.
Can I have an earlier meeting like this on our first November meeting?
Yeah, that would be the next week then, November
What's our
4th.
deadline?
The public hearing notice will go out this Friday, but go out with these numbers as preliminary.
Which
They're
is
not-
fine.
Which is fine, yes, they can change.
We did it before.
Yep,
November 18th is when
things, so we have one meeting in between.
we want to do the adoption. Need to do the adoption.
Well, I mean, we're operating right now without Joyce tonight.
Right, exactly. I mean, I feel comfortable
She
not
could-
being here for that next one if need
There's
be.
nothing concrete's going to happen if we do it next week.
Right.
We just get more information.
Right.
No. I'd like to try to get at this sooner rather than later.
I can meet whenever.
Same thing, Monday night?
Monday,
Yep.
same, 6 o'clock, 6:30, what time? Sure.
Ask him.
Either or works for me.
6 PM?
Sure.
And so it'd be 6 PM, sorry, Monday, the 28th.
Okay.
And then in the meantime, if you have questions as you go through it, feel free to let me know. We can get you the detail stuff on it before that meeting then.
Yep. Move to adjourn?
Second?
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Stand adjourned.